Hello, friends. My name is Steve, and welcome to the Friday Conversation. We're here with some friends. And Dwayne, you want to kick us off with an introduction, please?
Sure. My name is Dwain. I am a Bostonian, is what I claim. I was actually born in Barbados. I am a novelist, filmmaker, and I currently reside in Los Angeles, California.
Nice. We'll get into all that, I'm sure. And Chris.
My name's Chris Mohan, sometimes YouTube or sometimes appear on other channels, and Dwayne's kind of like bit that he's given there at start sounds like, you know, the character that I would write in one of my novels if I ever was to write one. You know, that's the kind of background and life story that they might have, you know. So, yeah, glad to be here.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit, Dwayne, about the strike, and hopefully that gets resolved soon because it's been going on almost 4 months?
Almost 4 months, yeah. It's been really tough on a lot of people in town, and a lot of my coworkers, myself included. We were supposed to start back work in May, and no work, no money, no nothing. And not just for the writers, for the actors as well. So it's been a challenge. Yeah.
Yeah, I think some people forget that it's not just the people on screen; it's the people behind this, like people who do lighting and who do
100%.
audio and who do, who clean up after, who do the sets. I mean, there's a lot of people involved. It affects a lot of people.
100%, and it extends even to the businesses that are around those studios, the restaurants, everything else. Like they're all being impacted. So the town is having a very difficult time right now.
Yeah, for sure. And for people who haven't listened to our interview already, but tell us about Androne for those few people who haven't yet.
Androne is a science fiction novel. It was published on September 1st, so this month is currently September. So September 1st, and it is, give you a brief synopsis without trying to ruin it. It's the story of a drone pilot. And in the near future, drones aren't just in the air. Drones are also on land. They're aquatic drones. They're quadrupedals, we call them, which are four-legged drones. And then there's a different type of land drone, which we called an androne, which is built in the human image, 2 hands, 2 feet. And this is supposedly to prevent casualties in war. And one of our androne pilots discovers something very nefarious about the nature of the war that they're fighting. So, in a nutshell, that is Androne, and it is it's out now. Please, definitely go check it out.
I can kind of see warfare going that way, going to more of a drone approach.
I could see it. I think that in Ukraine right now, their drones are, one of the most prominent forms of attack for both sides. And I see the stuff with Boston Dynamics. I don't know if you guys have seen those videos where they have that four-legged animal-like machine, and then
terrifying.
Yeah. It can do backflips. It can swing on So there's a possibility of a future with drones being in that. Operating in that way. And in fact, the Boston Dynamics stuff is one of the, I wouldn't say motivations, but sort of inspirations of what an android might be able to do, or what a machine like that would be able to do if piloted by a person.
Is it the case when you're planning a book like that's something that's cooking for a long time? You see that because those Boston Dynamics film videos have been around for a long time now. The very first one that came out, people were like, it's because it's true and it's uncanny, and it kind of germinates over a period of time then.
Yeah, I think, this idea started for me way back, like a while back. I wanted to do it as a screenplay originally. So I do think, like you said, it has been germinating for a very long time. And I can't remember when I first started seeing those videos. But the process in transitioning it from what I thought was a film into a book, that was the real challenge. Because again, it was all visual. It was all just images in my head. And it took a little while to get it from the screenplay format to a book.
I would imagine it's a lot more words for a book than it is a screenplay.
That's when I used to write only screenplays, right? Back in the day, I would write spec screenplay after spec screenplay, and I'm sort of transitioning now into books. And the word count, I mean, to rewrite a screenplay, it could take me a few days. In fact, on our show is Fire Country. I'll give that a plug too. Fire Country, it takes us, they give us 3 days sometimes to write the entire screenplay. And it's it's about, no, it's not even 60 pages, it's about 45 pages because of commercial breaks in between. But, you know, that's 15 pages a day. We can finish the entire television screenplay, in 3-4 days. But a novel, my God, like it takes, for me especially, because I'm not a fast writer, I've never been a fast writer, it takes me a long time to write a screenplay. So, I mean, to write a novel. So, yeah, a lot more words, a lot more pain, a lot more suffering in writing a book.
But the creative process, interestingly, like if you were to start another novel tomorrow, Dwain, for instance, does the thought kind of start with, as because your day-to-day work and your workflow would be writing a screenplay? Is it a case of writing it nearly as a visual thing and then trying to make that appear on a page as a written novel, or do you start as a novel with descriptive text and all that kind of stuff?
That's a great question. I think now that I've sort of entered the world of books, and when I say enter the world of books, I really have, like, it's a whole different world. It's a whole new thing. Just understanding, like, and I'm not answering your question at the moment. I'm sort of segueing. I'll try to get back to your question.
Find your way to it.
But like Goodreads, like 6 months ago, I knew it existed, but I had never used it. I just recently got a Goodreads account, and how important Goodreads is, and vocabulary like arc. What is an arc? I had never heard that word before 6 months ago, and just the whole book world has sort of been flooding into my brain. A lot of information on that. So, and I knew this would happen. So I forgot your original question, but you said that again.
Yeah, well, because your day-to-day work is writing a screenplay. Does it go thought screenplay, turn the screenplay into a book, or can you go thought into let's go descriptive text, right, rather than kind of have that middle step?
Right. So it was like that for my first novel, but I think now, as my book agent and I are now talking about a new book. As I finish up, because right now I'm working on the second book of Androne is a 2-book series. So I'm working on the second book of the Androne series. And now we're talking about starting a new book. I am thinking of it entirely like a book, formatting and structuring it like a book. Just because screenplays, when I structure a screenplay, it's very lean. Like, it's sort of just the facts. Get to this beat, get to that beat, get to that beat. There's 90 minutes. You can't spend an entire chapter just lazing out on someone's, thoughts on something, or the description of a flower, right? In a screenplay, it's like boom, 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 boom. And not completely, but compared to a book, it's definitely hitting those beats, hitting those moments, hitting that structure. In a novel, you can sort of let it hang out a little bit more. So that's how I'm approaching this new one.
You mentioned the commercial breaks. Do you write around commercial breaks?
Yes. For teleplays on CBS, so we're on CBS as opposed to an HBO show, where in an HBO show they probably wouldn't be doing that. But on our show, yes, right before the commercial, something is going to happen that will hopefully bring you back after that commercial break. So we try to end those on cliffhangers. We structure it in 5 acts, and there's a teaser, and at the end of the teaser, there's something to pull you back, and then Act 1, Act 2, and so on. So that's how we structure it. While I think on an HBO show, they probably drop the hook at the end of the episode. while our episodes usually wrap up neatly. So there's usually no hook at the end of our episodes, unless it's the season finale. Then we drop a hook there. So it's a lot of different structural styles for different shows and different networks. Netflix would be different than ABC, would be different than other places.
When you wrote the novel, did you use those same techniques between chapters, or did you find yourself using that like during breaks?
I think so. I think I tried. I think I tried. There's some the end of chapters. I mean, if you try to do that every chapter, it would probably get old. So I couldn't do it every time, but I tried to have some, end on a note that whether it be emotional or action, that would try to bring someone back. So to a degree, I would say I did that. Yeah. I'm still very impressed by your backgrounds there, because every time I look at your screens, I see the books neatly stacked. I look at my screen, the back of my screen, I see a TV and some shoes hanging out there in the background. It's really bad. I need to work on that.
Just keep looking straight on to it. See if you look left or right, and then it's exactly the same as everybody else's. I have a stack here. Yeah, it's not good. I have a shelf here to my left, that's not put up on the wall, and yeah.
That makes
everybody's room is the same.
That makes me feel good.
Yeah, it's a mess. And just the shelf. If I move a little bit, you'll see the disaster that my shelf is. So I have to sit in a certain place. Yeah, don't let the backgrounds fool you. It's all
right.
Yeah. For how has your experience been since we last talked? What's been happening with your book?
Well, it's really been trying to market it as much as possible. I've watched the sales drop from the initial. We had initial pop, and they've sort of gone down, and it's to be expected. Beyond that, I've been trying to work on my website, and I created a website for myself that was trash, and I finally decided to stop being cheap and pay somebody to work on the website for me. So I've been working on that and just trying to work on the second novel as much as possible. As I dip into the Amazon comments and the Goodreads comments, people are brutalizing. It's tough. It's tough in the comment section. So I've been trying to learn, from that a little bit. And maybe I shouldn't be reading the comments, but I've actually seen a couple comments and I'm like, that's fair. So as I write, I think it's, writing's a journey and you learn, and I am learning, and I'm trying to implement some of those things into the second novel. So a lot of stuff going on, but I'm going along with it.
But your day job also has got a similar kind of feedback mechanism as well. I mean, obviously there's ratings that you can use for TV as well, but people will review your stuff online in much the same way.
Yes.
Is it different when it's personal versus professional?
150%. I'll say, especially for film. There's so many other people that can take blame for that episode that I can hide behind, right? Like, there's a director, the actors, it's crew, there's the editor, there's so many different things where I can say, and especially being in a writer's room, there's 8 of us, 7 of us, and I don't live that way that I would blame it on anyone, but in a novel, it's solely focused on the writer, as opposed to on a TV show, there's quite a few other people that, they might point to and say that this person didn't do a good job, or that person didn't do a good job. Mm-hmm. So I usually don't. It's a little harsher. It's a little tougher on the book side than it is on TV. Yeah.
I like that. It's just like every other job. You just blame the person that's not in the room at the time. You go, or somebody that's just left.
Yeah.
Oh, man, they dropped the ball on that one,
Right.
Yeah, it's tough. The That's why I admire, especially authors, because like you said, there's nowhere to hide behind, and I don't know. I don't know if I can handle it personally. I mean, that's a lot. I mean, because I'm sure the good reviews are like, oh wow, like that's great, and then you get even like the lukewarm reviews is like, let's be a bummer.
Yeah. Lukewarm. I don't mind. Again, if someone is, there was one review I read. This is an interesting one, and I guess people have different scales of things.
For sure.
He gave me a pretty. If you read the review, it sounded pretty good. But then he gave me 3 stars, and I was like, that sounds at least like a 4-star. Like, so different people have different levels of how they rate things. The guy, I mean, it was only complimentary. And then I got 3 stars. I was like, wow, that should have been a 4 or 5. But I don't know. I don't concern myself with it too much anymore. It bugged me in the very beginning, but I had a talk with my agent. I'm over it now and moving on. Moving on to different stuff. Do you guys, and I know that you guys focus a lot on sci-fi and fantasy. Is that sort of where you guys live mostly in your reading habits?
I would say for me, yeah, I'm trying to branch out a little bit just because like you can sort of get bogged down and nearly see. But when you read too much or watch too much of the same thing, you start to not treat it for its own right. You start to pick it up within the genre, and you kind of it sometimes destroys the whole experience for you. But if I'm looking for a comfort, something that's in comfort, it's sci-fi fantasy for sure.
Sci-fi fantasy. Is there a preference there between science fiction and fantasy, or?
That's a good question. I would have always said fantasy, but sci-fi's been a very nice. It's a freshness. There's a freshness of sci-fi. I think that appears that I think sometimes fantasy can kind of within the first 10 pages go, oh, it's this type of book, and not to say that that's bad or something, but it's like okay. But if I want something, pick up the book from the cover or something. I go, oh, I wonder what this world's like. The sci-fi it seems to give a lot more variety in that way, off the page anyway.
What I've noticed, and you guys are probably far more well versed on this than me.
We're not.
But I've noticed overall sales. I'm really now trying to learn about the book industry and genres and everything else, and which genres sell. Again, this is something I never knew, but different genres sell at different rates. And there are different expectations for a sci-fi book as opposed to a fantasy book, as opposed to like a thriller with a female lead type book, which, according to some of my agents and some others, that's almost the peak. Like the girl in the window, or the girl on the bus, or the girl on the plane. A book like that tends to outsell almost everything else, which was. Again, you guys, this is no news to you, but this is all very surprising to me. Not in a bad way, just like, oh, okay, so that's... And what I've noticed also is I chose a genre that's kind of at the bottom of the sales chart, right? Like if you have a big name in sci-fi, you can earn a lot of money, that's fine. But generally what I've learned is even fantasy tends to sell better than sci-fi overall.
That's probably true.
Have you guys sort of, now I'm like, man, maybe I shouldn't be writing sci, but I wonder if there's like in your groups, in your circles, is there that preference as well? Does it tend to be more fantasy loving than sci-fi?
I sort of come at this from a slightly different original viewpoint because my YouTube channel is about movies and books actually secondarily, right?
Okay.
And one of the things I really liked about going into the book sphere is that it is very much more broad across the sexes. Movies tend to be, whether it's creators or people that comment or other, it's very, very male centric, in terms of the kind of viewership that you get, the kind of reaction you get. Whereas I would say fantasy, even more so than sci-fi, is very broadly mixed male-female, and having that kind of equal viewpoint, I think that's what I see, if you know what I mean, from that point of view. Sci-fi still tends to be a bit male focused, although I would say some of the very best sci-fi channels that are females, actually, as it turns out, in a lot of ways. So it does go across, but I think it is still seen as a male kind of hobby. A lot of archetypes and characters that I see are male central characters, if that makes sense, and therefore written by men and stuff. So I don't know if that plays into it at all, but that's just what I see when I read.
That's very interesting. That is very, very interesting. Huh?
Yeah, I wonder about the barrier of entry for a genre like sci-fi. If it's different if someone who's new to the genre, how likely are they to pick up a sci-fi book versus picking up something like a nonfiction or something like what's been adapted recently, or the book that's on everyone's book club list that's usually like YA or maybe romance adjacent, I guess. I mean, a lot of people read romance.
Yes.
So I kind of wonder what that barrier is and who is reading sci-fi and fantasy. Or I think fantasy has gotten more popular because of stuff like Game of Thrones, and people were like, "Oh, I didn't know fantasy was like. I thought it was like washboard abs and a sword and a dude with long hair like Fabio or something." So maybe I wonder, why people will be more open to something like fantasy than they would be sci-fi, or if that even is the case.
It is really surprising. Again, this is just in conversations with agents and editors and other people, and I can't even think of the name of this thing, but like not the publisher, but under the publisher that we are under, we do sci-fi and fantasy, and there's a word for that, and I can't even think of it.
Like the publisher, like the editors, or
I was thinking like a publishing house, that kind of thing. Just like
that type of thing, right?
Subcharter house, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Anyway, they only do sci-fi fantasy. Their fantasy always outsells their sci-fi. Like they mentioned that to me. They were like, "Don't worry about it. It's a normal thing. We usually do more fantasy than sci-fi, et cetera, et cetera." So it was just surprising to me that was the case. I'll tell you guys, I've never read a fantasy book. I'm only into sci-fi. Sci-fi is my jam. I love science fiction. I did watch Game of Thrones and was surprised by how good Game of Thrones was. But I had never really gotten too deep into fantasy, and I did get my first fantasy book, and I will read one, but I'd never been into fantasy that much. And I think it is what you're saying, Chris. Maybe there needs to be that show, that thing that brings people into the science fiction genre more. If Game of Thrones did it for fantasy, maybe something like Foundation, which was originally a book, but Foundation can do it for science fiction or something else.
Yeah, I mean, you can play the same kind of question for TV, for sure. Like, 9 out of 10 things in TV are crime, murder dramas, investigation sort of things. Even when they're not police procedurals, they are something that kind of lives in that world. Like I watched something like, what was it, Poker Face or something, that is like a detective show. She's not a detective, but it's a sleuthy kind of thing.
Yeah.
But, it still follows that formula. For that, how many sci-fi shows can you think of? Like you sort of have to go to Foundation, which is pretty heavy even for me. To be saying that's a watchable show for me and my wife to sit down and watch. I even think of somebody had asked me, recommend me a good sci-fi movie from the past 10 years, and I'm recommending Ad Astra, which I think is a great movie, but it's quite heavy in terms of theme and tone as well.
Yes.
It's not as easy to get into it. Even Expanse, which we read recently, the TV show. First 2 series, kind of heavy and a bit difficult to get into for a lot of ordinary people who haven't read in the genre, etc. So there needs to be an entryway show that's not Star Trek, if that makes sense.
Yes.
That is much more soap opera, I suppose, than sci-fi. I don't know. If I had the answer, I'd be a rich man and wouldn't be sitting on a Friday night in my back room talking about these kind of things. But I think it's a problem right across all media.
Very, very true. And some of the great science fiction shows. I was talking to Steve about Dark. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's a Netflix show, and it's, in my opinion, one of the great examples of great science fiction. but
Yeah, brilliant.
it was very niche. Not many people have seen it. I can't have many conversations with people about it. I just never. It was too much. Like you said, heavy. There is a heaviness to some of the concepts and big ideas that live in science fiction. And what is very surprising is that, not surprising, but surprising to me, someone who loves big ideas, is that the biggest sci-fi shows and movies tend to just have one simple little thing, and everything else is normal. It's just one, like even the Marvel movies. It's like, okay, there's this there's this suit of armor, and he gets into it, and that's the science fiction element, and everything else is the same, and that's it's not too heavy for people to sort of grab onto.
That's right.
Yeah.
What is a good science fiction movie from the past 10 years?
That is a great question. I have the worst memory of anyone else. I mentioned this film before. What was that film that I mentioned with the aliens? Arrival. I enjoyed Arrival.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Brilliant.
That came out a few years ago. But yeah, there's not that many, and I think, and this is no disrespect to Marvel. I know there are a lot of Marvel people who represent Marvel in a big way, but in the film industry, like the spec market, which is speculative screenplays, it is dried up. Everything is now, not everything, but most things are based on existing IP. They don't want to take risk on new ideas. And there have been a lot of people with great sci-fi scripts that are just, they're not based on anything. They're original ideas that have just died. And I think to a degree that is the Marvelization of the industry, and that's part of the reason I think why we haven't gotten that many good original science fiction films in the past 10 years, which is sort of the span of Marvel's dominance to a degree. I would say, though, I'm hopeful for The Creator, which comes out in a couple weeks. I don't know if you guys saw the trailer for that.
Yeah.
But it seems to be original sci-fi, so that's
Yeah.
I'm going through my letterboxd. Right, here's a couple.
Okay, good. You got
the
some
Joaquin,
examples. All right.
the Joaquin Phoenix film Her.
That's good.
Is brilliant. It's basically just within the 10 years, because it's 2013.
Okay.
I have a very great fondness for the Benson Moorhead movies, things like The Endless, Resolution, etc. They're kind of indie movies. Like The Endless
haven't
is just
seen those. Okay.
blows my mind. I love those. Something in the Dirt, etc. What else?
How is the Something in the Dirt? Is that really good? Something in the Dirt?
It's nowhere near the level. It's not nowhere near the level of Think of Endless or even that world that they created with the Culprit. But I like their filmmaking at all. And I also think a lot of sci-fi movies now fall into sci-fi horror. There's a lot, like horror is still a genre that sells in the cinema. Like if I look at my listings in the cinema, it is animation, superhero, horror, and nothing else. Week on week. So a lot of that kind of stuff translates to that. So like you'll have stuff like Megan and stuff that came out recently that's sort of sci-fi-ish. I would even say that like Jordan Peele's stuff is sci-fi-ish in a way. That's true. Yeah.
Okay. So. Okay. Good. It's good that you have a list. We need a list.
Yeah.
You do need a list. That's it.
It's hard to remember sometimes. Everything gets blurred together, and things. There's this. I'm going to use another -ization word. There's a McDonaldization of entertainment. Sometimes it's like you eat it and you move on. It's like, what's next? While back in the day, we had classics, movies that we would watch and rewatch. They would come on TV and we would watch it, and we'd buy it on VHS and we would watch it, and we would rewatch it over and over. And that, at least for me, and I think I've gotten caught up in it a little bit, it sort of slipped away from me. I haven't been rewatching those movies over and over again. Mad Max is one I should put up there. I really enjoyed Mad Max.
Possessor.
Go ahead. Oh, Possessor's that's horror.
Is it good?
Oh yeah, it's really good. It's really, really good. Yeah, and anything by any Cronenberg will do.
The body
Infinity
horror
Pool's
stuff
probably
always
closer,
pushes me away a little bit. That was sort of my. That's why I didn't try it. I was like, I heard body horror, and I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's body horror.
Okay.
It's
brutal,
definitely
though.
body horror. Yeah.
Brutal.
Alex Garland stuff as well. The Ex Machina and the Annihilation, etc.
Ex Machina is amazing.
Oh yeah,
it's really, really,
yeah,
really, really good.
yeah.
So, how can I word this? With a lot of the, I hate to pick on Marvel, I'm not a fan, but and a lot of people are. Is the easily consumable content, is that contributing to the people who make these decisions risk averse because it takes a little bit of thought and it challenges sometimes an audience? Is that part of it? Is that it could be challenging, it's not just easily digestible and you move on?
You're saying the non-Marvel films?
Oh, the Marvelization of the industry is because it is. I mean, it's popular because it's easily digestible. I mean,
Yes.
you watch it and it doesn't take a whole lot of thought. I mean, it's people punching each other for 2 hours.
Uh-huh.
Is that part of the reason why they become risk averse?
I think so, and I think the success of it, just the outright blatant. Like, there was a while where Marvel, it didn't matter. Like, you slap Marvel on it, and it was successful. Those movies made just every one of them were making $1 billion. And in addition to that billion, the thing about Marvel that was also helpful is you can slap it on lunchboxes. You're selling toys, stickers, little pendants. So there's so much more money generated out of that. They were making so much money that, everyone wanted a franchise, sequels, lunchboxes. It was just so much money beyond, like you said, it was pretty simple and straightforward. That no one wanted to take a risk on something that might be the next Star Wars or the next Matrix, which were original ideas when they originally came out. So.
That's right.
Yeah, why spend $100 million? Because the thing about sci-fi usually is that you're going to spend about $100 million making that movie, if not a lot more. So they want to be guaranteed money coming back in.
Return.
Yeah.
Look, we live in a world where a Brandon Sanderson adaptation is considered a risk. Like one of the most phenomenally successful authors in the world, and his movies are considered a risk by Hollywood. So I think our bemoaning of other lesser IPs not getting their chance or otherwise is maybe we're in a different headspace than the decision makers.
Exactly. I heard recently, he had a TV show in development that fell apart. Like it's insane. Like, you need to basically be horror, and I think the point you made with horror is really good. Horror can be, because it's cheap, some of those horror movies you can make for $5 million, $10 million, and they'll make about 50 to 100 million, and that in itself is a small success. So.
And the best thing for most of those is they'll do that in opening weekend. They have a following that does it in one weekend.
Yes.
Makes that film profitable in one weekend without it having a long tail, which means it's easy to commission another one of those. That's because those films drop off a cliff after 3 weeks.
It's
like,
true.
they're gone.
It's true. And that's why they come to digital.
There's always another one coming.
Yes.
Yeah.
Horror is a good way to go. Horror is a good way to write. Yeah.
So as a writer, it would be a good genre to get into if you write horror?
100%. And this is sort of the community that I sort of hang around with a lot of other screenwriters, and we talk about what specs we're working on, and a lot of them are writing horror. $5 to $10 million, those sell, because most writers don't own, no writers own Marvel, DC, Pixar, Star Wars. They don't own it, so they can't write any of those. So they'll write something worth $5 million that'll cost $5 million to make, and try to sell it. A cool, new, interesting idea like, what was that movie? Final Destination, like a Final Destination concept, and write it for $5 million, and that usually gets traction in town, and someone will either buy it or option it or something like that.
Yeah, and horror always has been actually a playground for fun and ideas, like in general, because it didn't need it. It creatives go towards horror because it gives them the opportunity to be creative, fun. Actually, nearly you not have any money, so what else? How else can you do this? So things like Blair Witch and etc. are born out of that kind of world. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I will try to. I did try to write a horror once. Didn't come out too good. I think I'm not made for horror. It's not a genre that I'm good at, because I think I get grossed out easily. I get scared. Like, it's just not in me. Like, someone once showed me the bottom of a starfish. I almost died. Because I don't know if you guys have ever seen the bottom of a starfish. It's all these little tentacle things. I can't deal with that. I can't deal with that. So horror is not my genre.
What a great twist it'll be if your first best-selling horror book is called The Bottom of a Starfish. I know exactly where that came from.
Starfish horror.
Yeah. My problem with books, horror and books, I have never, and I'm not saying this is some bold statement, I've never been afraid in a book. It just is not a medium that communicates terror. Like, it can be tense, for sure, like you can create tension, but not in the same way that a film can convey it, because often the film is doing it with multi-sensory. It's not doing it just with visuals, it's doing it with sound, etc. And, there's a lot of things going on there to make it work, whereas books... It doesn't matter if it's Stephen King or anybody. I'm never properly afraid. I've heard of people, like lots of people, going, I can't read anymore. But that's not me, and I just think that's so difficult.
Which film would you say has terrified you the most? Because I know for me, strangely, it was The Grudge. The Grudge did it to me,
right? Okay, yeah.
In a way that other films hadn't before.
Grudge is a good call, and that. Most terrified I've ever been in a film. There's the ones when you were smaller. Like when I was, I watched The Terminator at 8, right? And honestly, I have never been more. I don't think I've ever been as terrified in my entire life. Didn't tell my parents I'd watched it or anything, but it was one of those things. But aside from that, if I think about really great terrifying movies, I think The Changeling, the George C. Scott one from 1980. I love. It's creepy in all the right ways, and the one I always use from recently is that watching horror with headphones on is just the greatest thing, because you are sensory deprivation to the rest of it, right? So I watched a film, another independent movie called After Midnight. I've already seen After Midnight, right? And it has a jump scare in it that, honestly, I was sitting beside my wife, and I describe it as it happened, and it started at the top of my head and wiggled my way down the body. So and my wife was beside me in bed, just falling asleep, and went, "What the hell happened?" And I said, "I'm not quite sure." Right. I lost control of my senses. It just overtook me in a second. I was trying to hold it together, but it just, every bit I tried to control as it was moving down my body, the rest of it was falling apart. Yeah, that is a great jump scare. It's not a scary movie per se, but it has, it's brilliantly done.
Scariest movie? That's a tough one. Because I think there's different levels. There's like unsettling, and there's scary, like jump scares, and there's different types of scary. I think if I don't know, that's a tough one, because a lot of movies are unsettling or have really great. Like The Witch has some great.
Oh yeah, it does. Yeah,
but it's not like a jump scare. Yeah, it's like more of unsettling. Sometimes I think less is more though too.
So Hereditary is a bit scary for prolonged periods.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I won't say too much, but yeah, there's a certain section of that. There's a 15-minute section that's pretty.
Yeah. Gnarly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's always great when people don't tell you, because when people tell you it's really scary, I don't know if it's like I go in with a little bit more armor, but I never get that feeling unless I just happen to be flipping through Netflix and I watch something, and then I get scared when I'm not prepared for how terrifying the film might be. So I always I try to know as little bit about a film as possible when I go in.
The trailer problem. Why trailers are never watched in my house, pretty much, unless it's I happen across it by accident or something.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that. Like something like what is the film? Isn't it Prometheus? You call it? Like I went in not knowing that was an alien movie. Like it was all over the market, and for like I literally got to the end of that movie and went, oh my god, this is an alien movie. Like the last 15-20 minutes or something, I was like, wow, this is cool. This is a whole different thing. So even though it like was literally marketed the whole way, when I went back and watched the trailers and stuff, it was like, well, this is obviously, but it was just called Prometheus. I was like,
Well, I gotta say that must have been an amazing way to watch that movie, right?
Yeah, it was.
That's almost a twist. If you don't know that's an alien movie, the ending of that, when you see that thing coming out, it's like a twist ending almost.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was completely blunt. It was like one of those ones you wanted to grab somebody and say, did you know? Because I didn't know. Was I the last person to know? The first Alien movie is another very good answer to what is the scariest movie that I've ever seen of all time. I still sometimes just put on the first 20 minutes of that movie, just late at night, just to get that feeling, that unsettling kind of foreboding. Yeah, that's a perfect 20 minutes of that movie. I love it.
Well, in talking about that stuff,
just like, the transmission alone.
The transmission?
The distress signal that they got? Yeah, they listened to. Even that alone was, creepy.
You notice how many times that's been stolen now from... Because I didn't... the first sci-fi movies I watched had that trope. And I was like, oh, wow, this is new and interesting. But no, it's been taken from Alien and other films or books like it.
I love that when I'm watching movies or reading books and you see where the first time you've seen it, or you seen where it probably started from in some way, sometimes in another genre and was morphed through and somewhere else. You see, and I think that's one of the nice things about modern day is that a lot of people are doing this cross genre kind of bits, so nearly pulling the rug out from somebody and saying you didn't think this was a horror book, or something like that, or you didn't realize this was going to be a crime novel or something like that, but they mix the genres. That can be really fun stuff.
I agree. I think horror comedy is one that's really popping up recently. That's been doing a lot of interesting stuff.
Speaking of where things started, have either of you read Neuromancer? Because a lot of science fiction stuff came from Neuromancer.
I started. I did not finish. Interestingly enough, but no, I haven't seen the full. Haven't read the full book. No, and I know I said I was a sci-fi guy. I can see the disappointment on your face already. I
didn't make it through either, so you're fine.
Okay.
I couldn't do it. No, I didn't make it. It was too much. It was a very challenging read.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the tough thing. And you know what? So I can talk. I've noticed that a lot of people in the sci-fi community like that element of it. I read a book recently. I won't say the name because it's a very famous book, a very famous writer. I don't need anybody mad at me. But I didn't like it that much. And it was hard sci-fi. And the book was very much about the science. And the story came secondary. It was a lot of science, a lot of scientific concepts. And I've noticed now with my book, people are like, yo, this is not scientifically accurate. And I'm like, yeah, it's science fiction. There's that fiction part of it that's not science. So I've noticed a lot of readers, a lot of science fiction readers want that hard sci-fi element. They want to know how it really works. I use a scientific concept called quantum entanglement. And the amount of comments I saw about how that is not how quantum entanglement works exactly. It's like, wow, man, you guys have... I thought I was doing a good job researching it. I was going through, I was like, okay, looking at all the research and putting it in. It wasn't enough for them. They wanted a lot more. So I've noticed that within this genre, there are people who want that stuff. They want that hard, deep science fiction knowledge put into the story, into the narrative. So for next time.
I might be one of those people. Especially if the book promises that's what it's going to be. So I will name a book that does it right. So Three Body Problem I had read, and the first half of the book is very much hard sci-fi, and I was loving it, and then it veers away from it and tries to not be as hard sci-fi at that point. I was like, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You can't set this up and do it so well and then kind of introduce a fantasy element or anything like that on top of it. Like, that is... You have broken the contract that you'd set up now.
Exactly.
You can write a science fiction book and kind of make up science, and that's okay, because that's you have that commitment from the start, or you can do a version of it or something, but you can't misrepresent it, if you know what I mean, in some way, and change the tone of it. And it's the tonal change of it, I think, is the thing that bothered me. Some people loved that part of it, like, for sure, but I was in it for the hard sci-fi and how well, a great job it was doing up to a certain point. It worked perfectly, it was very clever, it was all of those things, and I'm like, yes.
That is one book that I really, really need to read. I've heard so much about it, and I just never picked it up. Now, you know why? Because I know what it's about. I spoke to someone about it. They ruined it for me, but I asked them to ruin it. I was like, what's that? And they went through it. So I do know the whole story, but that's one that I need to read. But no, I mean, being a hard sci-fi lover is a good thing. I think I guess I need to do more research next time. I need to really dig in.
That's, again, I'd say this every episode that we do of this with Steve. Another reason why I could never be an author. Like, honestly, I can see it and I can speak about it and I can think about it, but I can never actually execute it myself. Like, I'm very well aware of that part myself. Like, that is not... I would get bored. If nothing else, I would get bored with the effort of trying to do it and end up frustrated with myself and I'm out. I've sunk 14 years of this life. I've written 800,000 words trying to fix it, and we're giving up. It's not right.
Right. That's the toughest element. Creating a world that's consistent, I think, either with fantasy or sci-fi. Because there is, to a degree, I think the best fantasy probably has not science fiction, but the fantasy element, whatever it is, makes sense in a way that's almost scientific.
Yeah.
It reminds me of we talked to Michael J. Sullivan a couple weeks ago, and speaking of the readers and how closely they pay attention, when he forgets a certain character or certain events that happen, he actually asks his readers, and they know exactly, like, better than he does, where they are or what the lesson that happened to them, or if they've ever met this other character.
How many books? How many books are in this series?
Oh, he has 12, I think.
12, 13, something like that. 13? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And he keeps extensive notes himself, but he does fine search. He has a group by theme and all of that kind of stuff. But there are times when he goes, "What happened to this character?" or otherwise. John Palladino talked about that as well. I heard that channel where he talked about when he sent this book to the editor. He says, "I know you want this person dead, but you've killed him twice."
Oh yeah.
She went, yeah, okay, thanks.
I could see that. No, it does get it gets tough keeping track of stuff, especially for me, the little stuff. Killing a character, I don't know. I think I'd remember that, but it is tough to keep it all in mind. I definitely 12 books. I sympathize. I can barely keep it together for a couple chapters, so respect there.
To be fair to John kills a lot of characters, so it's not that major an event, right. in single part,
Right.
Yeah, he kills a lot of characters very fast in his book. Yeah. So it's I wonder, like, when you add, science fiction to it, I wonder how you can just, like, let the reader know, hey, this isn't real. Like, don't fact check me. This is all just in my head. Instead of it being like, no, this is the way it really works. Or how will you go about that?
It's tough because, okay, so quantum entanglement is one of the most difficult to understand, mysterious elements in hard science, real science. We don't quite have a grasp on it yet in 2023. So I thought, perfect. We don't quite understand it. And it kind of works in the way, like, so I figured it would be okay. But these guys, they really dug in. I think I think but the actual scientist. So I have a relative who works sort of in this field. They thought it was fine because they themselves also say we have such little. It's like dark energy or dark matter.
Right.
We know so little about it. You can sort of bend it to your whatever. But I feel it's the amateurs or people who don't quite study it on that level. They've done their research and they believe they have a better understanding of it than maybe the people who actually do it. So they say that, but it didn't. Those comments to me, I felt okay because they weren't talking about story or character or plot or any of those things. So I was like, I just found them interesting and amusing. But also, it did motivate me to work a lot harder on the scientific elements in the next book, so that it is irrefutably correct. Not that it will be hard science fiction, but the next book, scientifically, they won't be able to mess with it too much. And still, I will probably see comments about it.
Look, I have a thing I say to my kids all the time. Just because it was on the internet and said on the internet out loud and somebody agreed with them doesn't make it true, right?
Right.
It's very true. Yeah. Very true. How much time did you spend researching these different topics for your book?
I spent, I would say, the length of the time that I wrote the book, because I would come across a concept or an issue that I would need to then stop and then start doing deeper research into. For example, the military rank, military structure. There was a certain point where I would sort of hit not necessarily a wall, but I would need to stop and take a couple days and start researching how these things work, how the hierarchy works. I didn't even know who was a sergeant, who was a lieutenant, like all these little things. Even the slang in the military, from calling someone a Sarge or saying LT for lieutenant. Like all these were little things that I had to sort of pick up along the way. So I think as I wrote the novel, it was like I would go through, stop, pause, and be like, okay, I need to research this element, because I don't outline the novel. I just sort of start writing, and I don't really know where it's going exactly. Maybe I know the end point. I know the twist at the end. I know what the general idea is, but how this character interacts with this character, who falls in love with who, those things I don't know as I'm writing the first draft. So I sort of went as I go and researched as I go and figured it out as I went. Probably not the best strategy, I would say.
There's no one way to do anything, Dwain, that's for sure. And I'm often surprised when I read a book, you enjoy a book or something, and somebody tells you about how it came together, and you went, I would have conceived that actually this was done completely the opposite way, you know what I mean? But because of how it was put together and stuff.
Yeah.
And how it all seems to come together, like it was completely designed the whole time. Like he manipulated me with points and all that kind of stuff. And you're like, no, I kind of did it as it was going along. And then I got to a chapter and thought, well, wouldn't it be cool if this happened? And I was like, okay, right, yeah. See, what do I know?
Well, Stephen King says that he writes like that. He says that he doesn't know the ending, that he just goes and writes and creates as he goes. And he's, he has some classics, some great novels, so works for some people.
I would completely see how he doesn't know the ending in his books. That is definitely something I would agree with. But I adore Stephen King, but I could do without the last 20% of a lot of his books in a lot of cases.
That is true.
But,
that is true.
That's not an old opinion or otherwise, but I think it's true for me.
No, I had that feeling. I haven't read that much Stephen King, but I did read Under the Dome, and I did have that feeling at the end of Under the Dome. I was like, wait, what?
is that what happens at the end of this? Or is that how you're wrapping this amazing story in word?
Right,
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm not a big King fan, so.
You don't like his writing, really, Steve? Do you know?
I kind of feel like he shows off sometimes. Like he just like he goes off on these tangents, and you read like 2 pages about a bank sign that makes no difference to the story. Like, why am I reading about a bank sign and what it looks like and the time on the bank sign and how hot it is? And it's like, I don't care. Like, why are we wasting time on this? It doesn't mean anything. But I just think sometimes he just like shows off. He just like does a 360 when he could just lay it up. That's like.
That reference was perfect for me, though. I always love a good basketball reference.
Yeah, I thought you'd like that. But I mean, he can. He's like, he's a Vince Carter. So he's gonna go and under his legs and dunk on some poor guy. So, I get it, but it's like it's just not for me.
No, I hear you. Yeah, no, there definitely are those where there's a little bit too much painting of the picture. And,
yeah, but I mean, he's doing something right.
Yeah,
people love him. So
yeah.
And we were talking earlier about ratings, and Chris has a whole video about ratings and different star ratings. It's so interesting to me.
Chris, you got to educate me, man. Like I'm really learning as I go on this thing. It's been out for 2 weeks. My book has been out 2 weeks, and again, I just heard of Goodreads. I'm learning there's something else called Book Hub, or BookBub, that I'm not familiar with. So like all these things, all these ratings, it's all news to me, and I need to learn the strategy on these sites.
I actually think from speaking to you, I think you've already worked it out, because my kind of thing for me was like, I'm not even a consistent rater. It's a bit like you were saying about that person's review when they wrote the review and they kind of give it 3 stars at the end. And you read it and go, as the person that's consuming the review, and go, well, it seems better than a 3-star if you read it. Right. But it might have been like a knife edge to that person because they have to pick a 3 or a 4. And that's very much it. Some people will have a 5-star review reserved only for about 3 books in their entire life.
That's true.
And some people will do it. I'm very aware of it when we do these kind of things in work, when you're putting Likert scales, the kind of rating things 1 to 7, right? There is quite a large proportion of the world that will never rate anything 1 or 7 at all. And yet some of the measurements of those results will only consider a 1 or a 7 as the results. They take everything out of the middle. So actually, if those things are completely inconsistent, so I just stopped rating altogether. It was actually torturing. And actually, I was reading the book, and at various points of the book, when I stopped reading, thinking to myself, well, what rating would I give this now? And it sort of creates this ridiculous pressure on the reader to kind of formulate an opinion on the book rather than consume it. You know what I mean? Rather than consume the art. So I was like, no, let's just read the damn thing, get to the end, and think to myself, is this worth recommending? Do I think so other people would get enjoyment out of reading this? And regardless of whether that's a 3, 4, 5, whatever way you think, but is it interesting enough that you got enjoyment and think other people should read it? That's really what a review's about. And you can go into the text about it then if you want to and give the reasons why. But the number is so irrelevant in that conversation. if you want, other than aggregators are seeking to use it as a commodity. Because that's really what Amazon are doing at that time. It's useful for them. They're farming user data in a way to represent and give it value for them. But I don't know if it's necessarily doing the same thing for the reader. And especially, and I make this point in the video, especially for a book like yours, Dwayne, that's been out for 2 weeks. You know, something that has a low number of reviews. Early on, those couple of reviews can be so important in future sales for that. It's different if a book has 1 million reviews. I can rate it a 1 star or 5 star. It doesn't really matter.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, I just for me it was a personal preference for that, and I know some people have very strict, what they would call very strict things of, oh, I give this 82% because of the metric that I have in my spreadsheet that I have. Well, I love that, but I still always look at these people's ratings and go, you've rated every book this year between a 76 and an 83.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And I kind of go, then that's not you're not using the full range there either. And especially for books.
What if you came across the best book you had ever read? You just randomly read this book and it's the best thing you ever read. Would you then dip into giving it a 5 star, or would you still?
In general, if I'm forced to give, if I have to give a book a rating, and sometimes Goodreads kind of says you have to give this book a rating. Sometimes I just give everything 5 stars. Like it doesn't matter at that stage. Well, they kind of get, if I finish it in Kindle, they say no rating, and I'm never sure whether no rating means that you sort of DNF'd it or it doesn't count it or something. Whether that is a 0 rating, is that a 0 rating, or is that, I'm not sure. So if my general rule is, unless it's a book that has thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of reviews, if it's a book that's below that marker, and I liked it, I'll give it 5 stars, because realistically, I'm just saying to somebody, this is worth reading.
Okay, good.
And some people hate that view. Some people absolutely they like the creative process and getting involved and crafters, and all the rest, and that's fine. And you do you, but there are no real guidelines other than give me a number at the end. Yes, so.
No, I think that's great. I think especially in the beginning, it does. At least for me, it means something. Let's see that 5 star, just not for the quality of the book, because this is I'll whisper this. I don't think it's a perfect book in any way, shape, or form, but I would rate books better. Cut that bit. I wouldn't say it's worth a 5 star or perfect score 100%, but I do like it. I do think it's a good book. But I think there are people who can write better than me, and there are books out there that are better than mine. But what I do appreciate about the 5 stars that people pop on there is that in the very beginning, it does sort of boost the score. Hopefully it's a recommendation to somebody else to say, hey, check this book out or something like that. So it's good.
Yeah. My other problem with it, of course, if it's a Goodreads versus an Amazon review, for most things that you buy off Amazon, is about the quality of the product and the build of the product, right? Mm-hmm. People rate books on Amazon critically as a 2 star or a 3 star in terms of the content, but what actually happens in Amazon is if you rate it 2 or 3, they think that book is defective, and as in build quality. It is not the same thing as a Goodreads rating, so I was very careful about Amazon reviews. That's like, whoa.
Yes.
You get something delisted.
Right. No, exactly, yeah. I've seen that before too. It's like, I bought the book and there were tears on the side and something like that. It's 2 stars. What? That's,
It's not your fault. Yeah. For instance.
Yeah, you see that all the time. Book came damaged, 1 star. Like, it's not the book's fault.
But actually, and I would say in that case they're using the Amazon ratings correctly for Amazon, if you know what I mean, because that is what that rating system is supposed to do in some ways. Because if Amazon printed it and as using print on demand, then that would need to be fed back. But I mean, they would need guidelines on creative artistic products versus a mop or a set of screwdrivers or something like that. They're not using the same rating system at all.
Right.
Yeah. I was just checking on Goodreads, and Andron has over 1,000 reviews, and we talked last time. That's pretty damn good.
I'll feel bad about 2 star on it then.
Yeah.
I've talked myself around again. There we go.
Yeah, Fortunately,
They're not really good though. I mean,
Yeah.
it's Amazon promotion. I think they do a good job of promoting the book. So they get it out there on that Kindle Unlimited, I think, and therefore it's basically free to a lot of people. So that helps.
yeah.
I don't know how I'm supposed to get paid in that system though, but it is, and they are doing their thing. So we'll see. It does get.
So I think the way that it works, I don't. If it hasn't changed, I think you get paid by page reads. So however many pages someone reads, then you get a certain amount of each time they turn the page. I think, unless they changed it.
No, that's correct. That's correct.
But that's the way it used to be. So if I download it on Kindle Unlimited and I read 200 pages, then you still get credit for the 200 pages that I read. Or if I set it down and for whatever reason, because I got busy or whatever, you still get the page reads on Amazon.
I see.
So it's kind of I mean, I guess there's pros and cons to it, but it's kind of nice to be able to just check out a book and be like, is this for me or is this isn't for me? And
right.
You get a few
and
page
the author
reads.
still gets a little something on the side. Yeah, I need to find out how much per page. Thank you, Steve. Let me know that.
I was surprised because a lot of authors, especially in the fantasy community, have shared exactly how much they made from book sales in Kindle, how much they, even per book. And I was surprised, like if they're selling the book for $5 or something as an ebook, how close the read in Kindle Unlimited is in terms of earning them the same money.
Wow.
As being in the cut. Like I was like, oh, I thought like buying the book would definitely be better for the author, in terms of supporting them or that kind of stuff. And you may as well read it in Kindle Unlimited realistically because of the ease of transaction and the way that is set, that sort of encourages you to read as much as you like, consume more.
Are they about even as far as the financial buying the paper?
It's not. Yeah, it is not as big a gap as you would seem on the ones that I've seen in terms of the sharing. Like I was like, okay. I thought it was going to be like, I thought you were going to see something like 50p versus $3. I thought it was going to be to that level because if a book's selling for that, and even the print and demand copies, it's amazing to me how little the author gets out of the paperback cost of that or otherwise. I'm like, for a $17 book or something, it's like, what?
Right.
That's insane.
That's good to know. That's good to know. Yeah.
Yeah. For a long time, I always tried to buy the paperback version, and it's less than for the authors. It's sad.
Yeah. It's less the paperback compared to hardcover, you're saying, or paperback compared to ebook.
Yeah, I think they deduct material and handling and some other stuff when you buy a paperback. So I think if you have I think authors earn more from an ebook than they do anything else. I think I might be wrong, but from what I've been told. Wow. Am I right? Am I on the right track, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very rough figures in my head, and I'm totally making this off the top of my head. But say a $15, $17 paperback sale is $3-4 or something to the author, something like that out of that spend, which is about what they were getting from the ebook sale of $5 or whatever it was.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is about the same as what you're getting out of Kindle Unlimited, around the same.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like, it doesn't matter what way you're consuming the book, other than if you really like a physical copy of something and you like the artwork that goes with it. That's what you like to fill your shelves, like Steve and possibly me behind us with looking up and going, I like that book, I like that book, I like that book, I didn't like that one, etc. That kind of record of your reading that you sometimes have. It seems to be a lot closer than I would have anticipated. Let's put it that way. That's it.
I feel like I'm getting an education here, guys. This is very good. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Bear in mind, this may all be false information. Like I really don't know what I'm talking about at the heart of
it. Don't listen to me. We talk a lot to other authors, and I've been I think it's still the same. But when last I heard that it was by page count. That you would get a certain percentage from page count. So I guess the good thing is even if someone grabs it and says, I'm going to give this book a try, and they read 100 pages and say, this isn't for me, at least you still get the 100 pages.
Right.
I think someone had told me that they put a minimum on pages now, but I might be wrong. I'm not quite sure, but they
did recently change how it was distributed as well, because they put the price of Kindle Unlimited up, and they kind of changed the calculation ever so slightly, that it was like the total amount of money that comes in for Kindle Unlimited, they kind of share it between the authors and the books have been read then, but
yeah, that's right. Yeah, so it is. Yeah, so that, yeah, you're right, Chris. So it is like whoever pays into the pool for Kindle Unlimited, that's where the money comes from. So then they divvy out that money. So yeah, I forgot. That's another.
They did that quite recently. Yeah, that was a change, I believe. But again, I'm spitballing. I'm only going through things that I've seen in passing. Some people have done really minute breakdowns of literally to the pound of and dollar of exactly what they got from which source and how many copies that constituted, etc. There's a lot of very open transparency about earnings as an author, especially as a self-published author, doing it yourself, and the costs that went into it, and how they're never going to see a return on investment, not probably for 5 or 10 years or so. It seems like a minefield in some ways.
Yeah. I'm curious as to, because I found it more challenging generally to earn money in the book industry than in the film industry. Now, of course, I've been in the film industry longer, and I'm now starting in the book industry. Just my advance on these 2 books compared to the TV show that I work on they're miles and miles and miles away. I do enjoy, the reason why I write the book is I love telling this story. I would not be able to do this on film. They only, like we talked about, horror or, low budget horror or whatever, or Marvel movies. So I'm able to tell this story in book form, but if I'm looking at the financial side of it, I do earn a lot more working on Fire Country. Do you guys consume more books, or do you consume more in film and television, would you say?
I mean, it's not close for me.
More film and TV.
My even my spend per month on film is embarrassing. That's one of the things I kind of hope with books is that it would be kind of lessen, my overall spend, because a film might consume in 2 hours, even with special features, it'll maybe stretch to 4, maybe possibly 5. A book's doing me days, weeks, maybe sometimes at an end. But I'm an idiot though.
No, I mean you like what you like. You're into what you're into. I feel like.
Yeah.
But you would say
I'm inspired on a daily basis.
It's based on the subscriptions, or also movie theater tickets.
A bit of everything, but I buy a lot of physical media, Dwayne. So I buy a lot of discs for. I treat it like a film school. It's very much, you look into the creative process for an awful lot of these, especially in the older or independent made movies. It's like an area of complete and utter fascination for me. Every time I watch even the worst movie, I'm like, yeah, but how did they go about doing it? They obviously had no money. It's the same kind of thing we were talking about beforehand. They had no money. How did they make? How did they do that on like so much money? Like one of the ones, me and Steve did 24 or was it 30 A24 movies or 24 movies?
24 A24 movies.
24 days. Yes, that's right. So we were going through some of those movies which are independently produced by to creators, and how low some of those budgets were for how incredible it looks on the screen. It was kind of a recurring theme,
That's cool. That sounds fun. 24 A24s in 24 hours. That's cool.
Was it A Ghost Story was really good. It ended up being one of my favorites. Yeah, really good. Very quiet, like a quiet horror kind of thing.
Yeah, it was a cool one. I enjoyed it too, which is weird for me. I tend not to like a film like that, but I did enjoy that film.
David Lowery's a genius. Proper genius. Brilliant filmmaker. But yes, books I thought was going to be a cheap thing. But as has often been said, book buying and book reading are 2 very different hobbies.
Very true. Very, very true.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, you guys, are you fast readers? Because a book might be able, no? Because if you buy a book, how long does it take you to read it? One that you like, generally. A few days?
About a week, I would say in general. If I do 4 books, proper books a month, I'm pretty happy.
Yeah. Well, then that's taking up, like you buy a movie, that's probably 2 hours, 3 hours and change. So you can consume a lot more on that side. The book helps to save a little bit of money. That's good.
That's exactly right. But here, Dwayne, you want to hear how low return you're getting out of YouTube creation? Like Steve has done his transparency videos on his spend on YouTube versus his return. And even this podcasting game, Steve, you big return this week.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I can retire. Yeah. I'm taking my 7 cents and going home. Yeah.
What's interesting to me though is, and I wonder if there's a similarity to this. I do not make a lot of money off of writing books. And if I just did the TV, wrote on TV and occasionally sell a movie, I could easily, that could do it for me financially. I wonder, is it the same for you with the podcasting and everything else? Is it the love of it?
I'm even on YouTube. I think I have 2,300 or 20, I don't know, over 2,000. I don't make anything from that. But but there's also reasons, because you can, on YouTube, you can pick and choose where to put ads. And I always put ads at the very end, where you can choose to put them as often as you want. So some people put them at the beginning, in the middle, and at the end, or certain points. So you can make it so you can't skip. So if you want to watch something, you have to watch it. I always do skippable ads at the very end. So I'm not pushing it. Like I don't want someone to watch and then have to sit through an ad for about a cheeseburger or whatever it may be.
Right.
So I don't make anything. But it's, even if I did really push it, I mean, even like Mike's book reviews, he has like 100,000 subs, and I don't think he makes much of. He can't live off of it. He can't. I think he makes a few $100 a month, something like that. I think is what last I heard, but I don't think it's anything you can do full time unless you have over like 1 million. I think books are too niche to. Yeah.
Way too.
I think you can. Like I it's easy for me to say because I don't have a big subscriber count or anything. But I honestly think if I did, I would have to pack it in. Like I think the expectations, the engagement you would have would be at a point where it would become work.
Right.
So that's why it's easier for me to come on Steve's channel, have the conversations and do the things that are fun about this whole space. Talk to cool creators, talk to people, create content, have interesting conversations, and just turn it off at the end of the day. That's where the fun is. And like you say, you're not doing it for any monetary return at all. But if it didn't have it, I have to find another creative outlet somewhere to balance out the stresses of life or whatever else you're going to do.
Right. But you guys say, and I heard you say earlier you don't think you could write a book, or at least you said it. I don't know if you could or if you have a plan, but there is, like, everyone has that, like you said, that creative outlet. I think as a human being you have that. Everyone, even people who don't think they have that creative thing inside of them. They need to get it out in some way, so it's important.
I definitely need it. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think I mean, it amazes me that people will hitch their livelihood on a platform like YouTube when YouTube can change their policy tomorrow about what they pay creators. And you're out. So you have to have other, like some kind of like Patreon or something else that you can depend on revenue. But yeah, if you can do it, I mean, but not for me. This is all just for fun. I've spent way more in like equipment than I'll ever get back. So, and I'm fine with that. I enjoy it. So it's okay.
Yes. Same. And that, for me, interesting. That's what novels are for me. I know I'm not going to get, my sales aren't blowing any, they aren't breaking records or anything like that. But I still want to write another book. I have an idea. I want to write it, and I think I'll continue writing books, even though it's making my filmmaking life more challenging. I used to want to be a big Oscar, like I'm talking when I was 20, a long, long time ago.
3 years
I wanted
ago.
to, 20 years ago. I just revealed my age
man.
there. But like I wanted to be a big name director, Oscar winner, director, all that. Like I wanted that. As I've worked in this industry more, I am very happy just working on a TV show where the ending, you may be able to tell what it is at the beginning. That type of show where it's sort of formulaic. It's go fight the fire. I can earn enough to pay my rent, and I work with really nice people. And I think that's the most important thing. I probably won't be getting any Oscars. And writing books takes a lot of time away. Takes my free time because I work on the show, and then my free time is writing the books. And then I don't earn anything on the books, but it's very satisfying. It's very satisfying to work on the novel. So that's my feelings on sort of working on books on the side.
And you're sort of, from hearing you speak, Dwain, you're lucky in the position that it's not like your day job you hate, and you're trying to find an avenue out of it, if you know what I mean. You're trying to find a balance creatively into not turning the creative part of your life into your job where it does become work and you don't have the release from it. Yes. I think I see lots of opportunities with people that work in creatives that are like, well, what do you do for fun? If I was a musician, I've turned music into my job, and now what? Like, I'm really stuck. I really don't know what to do. And I think about people like Keith Flint, who was in The Prodigy, ended up killing himself, I think, a lot because where was his release? Like, where could he put his channel his negative thoughts and stuff into if that was his job and that became his pressurized part of it? And I think you've got to find that balance for yourself in your life, in the how separating church and state, separating work and play,
100%. 100%. No, I think, if I had all the creative power in the world, what I would be doing as a filmmaker is creating something like Foundation, something very big, epic science fiction. I don't have that flexibility, so I work on Fire Country, and on the side I write a Foundation-esque big science fiction story. So, like you said, balance, finding that balance between the two.
Sounds like you got it figured out, Dwain, I gotta tell you.
So I had a question about Foundation, and I'll try and ask it in a non-spoilery way. But I recently watched it, and it almost felt like there was different writers for different sections of the series. It almost felt like it was like different people wrote different characters and different storylines. Does that happen, or is it usually the same group that writes the entire series or the season or episode or whatever?
It's the same group, but it is individual writers writing individual episodes. So the showrunner probably will take on more episodes, but when I say more, for a 10-episode series, he's probably taking on 2, at most 3 episodes that he's writing. And the other writers are writing 1 or 2 episodes. The higher up you are, probably the more episodes you're getting. But a staff writer will write at least 1 episode. So you might get 8, 7 writers on one show. So I think one thing that we do try to do in the writers' rooms is have a good variety of people to speak. You want a woman in the room, or women in the room in general, so that you don't have 10 dudes in there writing the women on the show. You want other voices in there. So like you said, writing different characters. Maybe there was sometimes 2 people will write one script, and you get 1 man, 1 woman, different people of different sexual orientations or races writing those episodes. So that's always helpful in those types of shows. And I think Foundation is, it's a sci-fi show living, in a different universe. And they still do place gender and racial dynamics a little bit. But on our shows, it really is helpful in the most simple of ways, non-controversial way, is like even knowing what young people say, nowadays. I don't know. I don't know what the 16-year-olds are saying, what slang they're using. So it is helpful to have a staffed writer who is 22, fresh out of college, in the writer's room, and they can be like, we don't say raise the roof anymore, which in my day we used to say raise the roof. Nobody says that anymore, so it's good to have that point of view.
Yeah, there was one storyline in particular that just felt had a really different feel to it. It just felt very it felt like it was a whole different series.
Sometimes that's the director as well. Sometimes you get a director who has a different type of vision, and they direct the episode in a way that's, I don't know. Sometimes it's not the overall feel of the series should have the same general vibe, right? You don't want one episode to feel like Quentin Tarantino and the other episode to feel like, Spielberg, right? But so the directors are supposed to fit in a certain, they have space, they have a sandbox, but try to stay within that sandbox. You have a little flexibility, but could be the director. Maybe it was the writers. I have no idea. What season are you on, by the way?
Yeah, no, I was just curious. I just finished season 1 last week, so I'll be starting season 2 soonish.
Interestingly enough, I just watched the season 2 finale 1 hour ago, just before we got on.
Nice.
Oh, okay. And what were your non-spoilery thoughts?
I thought it was okay. I liked episode 9 better. Episode 9 would have been a good season finale. A lot happens. I'll say that, and I think this is one of the big problems with shows, or the difficulty with shows, is there was a lull in the middle of the season where it wasn't as exciting. You could have pulled some of that stuff back because we got so many big moves in this last episode that it's tough to really let it sink in because there's some very big ideas, some very big things happen, and you don't get to really digest that because the next scene, something else big is happening. And maybe non-spoilery way, someone might perish, right? So it's like, it's like big thing happens, somebody dies, like there's a lot. So I wish they had pulled some of the bigger reveals earlier so that we can have more time to digest some of the really juicy things that happens in the episode. But it was okay. It was solid. Not to give it a rating, but 7 out of 10.
Oh, that must be so different to my experience in some ways. Although I think when you consume a lot of media, you do, where you're looking at it from a professional point of view. Like you're you're more conscious of pacing for sure, and more conscious of the timings than somebody else might be. They might come away from it and reflect on that and get there, but you'd be doing it in the moment, I would imagine, because it's your profession. If that makes sense,
yeah. And I know one of the writers that we have on Fire Country also wrote on this show, and she revealed some of some of the great things about the experiences she had on that show.
Yeah, like I haven't got a couple of episodes in, but it is classically one of those shows that they thought was unmakeable or unfilmable, in some ways, and that was taken on as a project and still going after 2 series. At a 7 out of 10 thing, I'd say is a massive success for the future of sci-fi in some way. So that's why I think we've talked about this in terms of fantasy shows. You don't get that many of them. And good, bad, or indifferent, we sort of need to celebrate the ones that we do have for the good that they have and not pick them apart.
I agree. I think it's, What was that show that came out recently, that One Piece and getting another season? Because a lot of these shows die after one season, so it's
because they're expensive. A lot of time.
Yes. Yeah.
Was it a Netflix show? Because I know Netflix is notorious for canceling things right away.
You're talking about One Piece? One Piece was Netflix, Foundation is on Apple. Which Apple is, interestingly enough, like sneakily a great sci-fi Place for sci-fi. Between that show, they have another called War of the Worlds or something like that.
So the Invasion, Surface,
Invasion,
Silo.
right? That's what it. Yeah.
Oh,
Silo.
Silo's brilliant.
Yeah. So good. And they also have Severance, which I thought was low-key pretty good. Yeah.
Pretty good. 9 out of 10.
Yes. I agree.
I have to say, it does. Actually, Silo and Severance were like. See, as far as writing, the same goes for books and movies, TV, all the rest of them. If you can write an episode of TV where the thing that's about to happen on screen, the person watching it is about 2 seconds ahead of you, especially at moments of high drama, that is the best feeling in all of storytelling, that you just know just before you see it exactly what's about to happen for an extended period of time. Severance does that in about the last 3 episodes better maybe than anything else that I've ever seen. It's just phenomenally good.
And there's such a high level of excitement when you have that feeling. You're like, no, you didn't. Like, that's what's coming out your mouth. Like, I don't believe you did this. Like, and then it hits, and then it's so satisfying. Yeah, and it really does.
Because
does that excellently.
Yeah, because there's so much you have to do crafting to give this viewer enough seeds, enough of a thing without giving the game away. Like, you just held back that last bit of information. You go, and then the season ended.
Right. No, it's so well done, and I just love the concept too. It's like my other half is an asshole. Like, like you're split into 2 people, and it's like, wow, that other version of me is so shitty. But do they even know that they're that shitty? Because they don't remember anything from it. They don't know how much suffering I'm in. I only work. Yeah. I work. There's so much. It's so good. Yeah. 9.5. I outbid you. You say 9 out of 10. I say 9.5 out of 10.
We're doing 0.5.
You may be right. I mean, I think it is exceptional. I think it is. I think it's really right up there.
Really.
And Silo is good too?
Yeah, I enjoyed Silo. Yeah.
Last episode, that was exactly the same thing. It's like, that means. Yeah. It does the same thing. And I think that's where speculative fiction does that kind of stuff probably better than a lot more other genres in a lot of ways. They can do it in dramas, murder mystery dramas, that crime detective. They can do it to a certain point, but I find that there's more action, or much more exciting in the moment, rather than kind of developing a world or a thread or a thought, because speculative fiction kind of, you don't know everything that's going on, and you can play with that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Wow. Lots more to watch now. Yeah.
And Apple has Ted Lasso, and Ted Lasso's just the greatest.
I've never seen Ted Lasso before, and I've heard so many good things. I just haven't.
It made my Mount Rushmore. That's not that popular. Mount Rushmore TV series.
Okay, let me hear it. Or at least 1 or 2 more besides.
So some of them are obvious. The Wire, West Wing, very kind of obvious choices. Veronica Mars, Friday Night Lights, and Ted Lasso. They're my top 5.
Okay. Ted Lasso, then I do need to really watch it. It's one of those things where it's like, I know this is an investment of time. Have you guys ever done that? It's like, I know it's probably going to be pretty good. Everyone says it's good, but if I do this, then that's like, I think it's 3 seasons, so it's like, I have to.
First series is all half an hour, which makes it easy. I'll give you the quick pitch for somebody's help. Now that I know your age, right? Do you like the movies Major League?
Yeah. Yes.
First series is Major League for soccer.
Cool.
Except it's way clever than. Again, there's a writer's room that details are phenomenally important. There's nothing like, and I mean, people have picked apart all of these episodes. I'm in one of those Facebook groups where people just go in. I've just been done my 15th rewatch of this, and do you know that in episode 2 this seed was planted, and then it came, like, everything is to the point. It's so clever.
Wow.
So clever.
It's on my to-watch list. It's definitely on my to-watch list. I
love it.
And since it's on your Mount Rushmore, that's very high praise.
And I'll say one more thing, right? What makes it different is at the moment when you create and set a storyline and to create drama throughout the storyline, throughout the thing, what Ted Lasso does, you're not supposed to do. It does. So I was actually going to do a full YouTube video on it once to say how it breaks narrative and writing convention, because it does the one thing that you're not meant to do in terms of, and that's one of the things that makes it so brilliant. It's another episode 9-ish thing, 9 out of 10 I think it is, or 11 out of 12. I think it's episode 9 it does it, and it's like, right, you're not meant to do that, but that's what gives it such power. That's what gives it such a thing to it. I may be overselling it. See, this is what the expectations we were talking about. I should have given you none, and you come to that realization yourself. Yeah, but there you go.
Okay. Well, but you do help pull people into the show though, because now I'm very curious about that episode 9 to 10, 9 of 10, what they're doing narratively.
Yeah.
What about you, Dwayne? What are your top 5?
You asked me a tough question. I never have these things prepared, so it's always really, really bad. I can tell you my number 1 very easily. I know what my number 1 show of all time is. Let me I have 3 in my head so far for...
Fire Country.
Yeah.
Thank you. You gave me the right answer. First is Fire Country. Number 1 is Fire Country. I'm legally obligated to say that. Fire Country is that's 1 of 5. Number 2, I'd have to go with Seinfeld. I thought Seinfeld was extremely clever, but ahead of its time. I don't think it would break any barriers today, but I think what it did for its time was excellent. I'm going to say this one is controversial. It's because I didn't like the last 2 seasons of this show, but Game of Thrones. Just because they did so much in those first, was it 5 or 6 seasons? That was so new and revolutionary and great. I thought it was a fantastic show for those first 6 seasons or so. And I really, really still think, for me, one of the best hours of TV was Battle of the Bastards, and I can't get over it. So I'll still give them a lot of respect, even though it's, I more than most really hate what they did with the last 2 seasons, because I think there's a way to end things where you don't completely drop the ball. Like you can end it in just, it was meh, like a 5. But to go all the way down and really drop the ball, and I think it's my opinion, and this may not be true. It feels like they did it because they had enough. Like the writers were like, man, we were on this 7 seasons. We want to do Star Wars. I think they had a deal for Star Wars. They had other stuff going on, and they were like, let's just scribble it on paper real fast and then put it out there, as opposed to really put in the time in, which you did in the first 6 seasons. It's unfortunate. But anyway, Game of Thrones. And I really, really enjoyed Breaking Bad. I'll put that up there. And number 1, easily and by far, is Dark. I am enamored with that show. I love Dark. So that's my top 5 all time.
What's yours, Steve? Come on, that's a pretty heady mix there. He's got his comedy, he's got the fantasy, he's got the sci-fi. That's a pretty good list, man.
That's pretty good.
And the Fire Country.
I think number 1 would be Dark. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Fire Country.
Yeah.
I think Dark would be, probably number 1.
Okay.
For me.
Wow.
I think Curb Your Enthusiasm, because I'm one of those people who think Curb is better than Seinfeld.
Okay.
I like Curb too. I like Curb a lot.
When Larry David left Seinfeld, there was a big drop off. I thought season 5 or so after that, it gets really.
Okay. I did not know that. I didn't know he left. I did not know. Okay.
Yeah. And to this day, I still refuse to watch the last episode of Seinfeld. I've never seen it, and I never will.
It's not good.
I don't want that tainting my memory. Yeah.
Good.
I won't watch it.
Good decision.
Yeah, will not do it. I think Breaking Bad, The Wire, and I don't know. It toss it between the first 5 seasons of Game of Thrones or Lost as a whole. When you go the whole, there's a lot of bad episodes of Lost, though. There's a lot of really great episodes too, though. So it's hard to. But if Lost was 3 seasons shorter, it probably would have been.
I think the creators would
show.
completely agree with you on that. I think they were forced into a situation where they had to just write more.
Yes.
They talked about that many times, about that. So when they got to do other work, they had like this is going to be 2 series worth, or otherwise this is what you're going to get out of that. But Lost I still enjoy. It just never delivered on the promise that it gave you.
Yes.
At the start.
I agree so much. So agree.
Yeah.
So agree.
But the first 2 seasons are so good.
Yeah. One of the all-time great pilot episodes.
That feeling you talk about, that knowing what's happening 1 second before. I remember when they did because it was flashbacks. When you realized that one was a flash forward, I almost was one of my all-time great TV moments. That blew my mind. So that was that was really good.
So good.
We talked about that the other week. It was the show that did the whole thing about, oh my god, if only I knew what the numbers meant, but everything else would make sense. And then you get to a certain point, and then they bring the hatch, and then you go, oh, the numbers aren't important. But if I know what the hatch is, then I'll know exactly what's going on. And then the button. But the button. If I know what happens to the button, I don't care about the hatch. But the smoke. The whole thing. It was like a MacGuffin. It was MacGuffin after MacGuffin the whole time along to kind of draw you in to watch another season, which was great fun. Like I can't state that I didn't have great fun doing it, but at the end you were like, okay.
Yeah.
It's still better than the end of Game of Thrones, though.
That was exactly my feeling. That was exactly my feeling. It's like, what?
But Game of Thrones though has some great Hard Home. When I don't know if either of you know which episode was I guess most people have seen Game of Thrones by now, but the episode where they try and get the northern the wildlings to join them, and the walkers come. That was a great sequence. The last 20 minutes of that episode is amazing. Yes. So they had really highs, and then there's like really lows too. Yeah. So it's tough. Yeah, it's a shame what happened to that show.
It is. It really is.
I have that other connection to it, and that it was all filmed around here, so I can kind of walk around the place and see the show. So. And the museum and all's here. The sets are still available to be seen, and you could do the tour of. So I have I was going to do a podcast episode many years ago called Living in Game of Thrones Land when it was the middle of it, because a lot of people worked in the show, a lot of people were extras in the show. I had relatives that used to book their summer holidays every year to be extras on the show when it was filming, and they dreaded being killed off because they were killed off in one scene. They were done they couldn't be extras anymore. That was kind of in their extras contract and stuff. So they were like, oh no. So very interesting experience.
That's pretty cool though, to be killed off in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree.
That's piece of history.
Yeah, to be killed off. Michael R. Fletcher DM'd me the other day and said he wanted my name so he can kill me in a book, one of his books. I'm like, that is like I'm done. Like I'm good now. Like there's no other. That's like the peak, to be killed horribly in a book. I was like, I'm good.
Is it a fantasy book?
I can die happy now.
But maybe.
Yeah, I think so. This is next. I forget which one it is. City of Sacrifice or something. But
so he'd have to call you like Sir Stephen. He'd have to prettify your name a little bit.
Yeah, he's gonna change my name to fit the language of the book, but he's that's like, "Oh, cool. I'll kill you in a good way." I'm like, cool, that's pretty.
Yeah, he's gonna say that, but then he's gonna kill you in like the most weebly, like slip in your own excrement kind of break your neck kind of way,
It is Fletcher, so yeah, it'll probably be pretty terrible, but that's cool though. Like I'm
that's very good.
Yeah, make it interesting for sure. Yeah. you know, the time always flies when we just get going. We're going on almost 2 hours, but Dwain, thank you for hanging out with us. Really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you guys again. Always appreciate you guys having me and educating me as well on some book stuff and everything else. So great time. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate you guys having me here.
Yeah, and anytime you want to join us, let us know. We have all of the dates and stuff on our forum, so free to join whenever you feel like it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'll let you guys know beforehand, right? I'm not just popping in the middle of a conversation.
We don't care. We're pretty easygoing, as you might not have. You may even know. It's pretty easy.
All right.
But for people who want to find you and find your book, where's the best place to find you?
Sure. You can go to my website, which I am still working on, so bear with me on that. It's DwainWorrell.com. I'm on Twitter at Dwain Worrell, and find the book on Amazon or anywhere books are sold online.
Very nice. And there is also an audiobook available too, right? Is it an audio too?
Yes. There's a great audiobook done by Gary Titleman, and he's a great voiceover artist, and he did a great job on it. I recommend the audiobook. It's really, really well done.
Yeah, I know some people wait for the audio to be ready, so that's big for a lot of people. They prefer audiobooks, so that's good stuff. And Chris, where can people find you and bother you?
You can find me on my YouTube channel, which is just my name, Chris Mohan, Mohan. You can find me probably on a future episode of the Friday Conversation or Summer with Steve. We're doing read-alongs all over the place, which are all great fun. Or you can find me in the Page Tune forums. Let's go for there as well.
Yeah. Lots of time. But cool. Thanks again, everybody, and hope everyone has a fantastic weekend. Be sure and check out Androne, and I'll have all the links down below.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.